From New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, North Korea's Kim Jong-un inspects cruise missile test, just as South Korea and the United States kick off annual military drills on Monday. Wildfires in Canada continue to intensify. Evacuations double in British Columbia, with the armed forces deployed in many areas. India beat Ireland by 33 runs to win the second T20 International and take an unassailable 2-0 lead in the three-match series. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen a strategic cruise missile test ahead of the start of joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. State-run news agency KCNA reported that Kim inspected one of his fleets in the East Sea, which is also known as the Sea of Japan. Few details were given, but the missiles reportedly rapidly hit the target without error. KCNA says the aim was to test the missile system and assess sailors' capabilities in a real war scenario. Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States are scheduled to commence major exercises on Monday to strengthen their joint preparedness in the face of North Korea's advancing military and cyber threats. The Allies announced the Allies' annual Ulchi Freedom Shield. This exercise will last until August 31st and involve over 58,000 South Korean and US troops. This year's exercise will feature a total of 30 joint field training drills by the Allies, 5 more than the Freedom Shield exercise held in March this year. Leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa are seeking to develop deeper trade and economic ties. The BRICS bloc of emerging world economies is holding its 15th summit in Johannesburg, South Africa from August 22nd to 24. Here's a look at the key focus areas at this year's summit.
This is the first time BRICS leaders are gathering since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. But the summit will be marked by the absence of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is participating remotely. The summit is expected to cover a wide range of issues. One of the key topics is the expansion of the group, as 40 countries have shown interest.
Them coming to the table with us will only strengthen the South-to-South cooperation that we need for a sustainable future. So I'm absolutely delighted that the countries have come knocking at the BRICS doors rather than us having to go to them.
BRICS members will also discuss cross-border trade in local currencies to reduce dependency on the US dollar. Altogether, the 5 member nations account for more than 40% of the world's population, and their combined GDP is more than 26% of the global economy.
The BRICS mechanism has the potential to become a crucial organization in determining global development. Its potential lies not only in the economy, but also in the various initiatives it promotes. In my view, the BRICS countries are ready to set a reform agenda for the current global economic order.
Promoting settlement in local currencies is a big issue that will be discussed during the summit. BRICS has emphasized financial cooperation since its establishment and has promoted the reform of the World Bank and IMF, as well as establishing the new development bank. BRICS opposes the hegemony of the US dollar and pursues the reform of the global financial system.
Experts say the summit is a major opportunity for BRICS leaders to counter Western dominance around the world. Bureau Report, DD India.
Ahead of the summit, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has said with the upcoming BRICS summit, he intends to create positive opportunities for not only South Africa, but for the African continent at large. Isabel Nakaria reports on this.
South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa says the BRICS summit will present opportunities for Africa. The BRICS countries make up one of the world's biggest economic blocs, representing a quarter of the global economy. President Ramaphosa is pushing for Africa to partner with the bloc and strengthen investment and economic ties. Johannesburg says it supports the expansion of the BRICS, though it's a matter that requires the concession of all members.
The value of BRICS extends beyond the interests of its current members. For its efforts to be effective, BRICS needs to build partnerships with other countries that share its aspirations and perspectives.
Several countries have already expressed interest, and more than 20 have formally applied to join BRICS. President Ramaphosa says there are huge financial opportunities that Africa can gain from the new BRICS Bank. The BRICS Bank has financed multi-billion-dollar projects in South Africa, including clean energy, water infrastructure, and greenhouse gas emission reduction. Isabel Nakiria in Johannesburg, reporting for DD India.
Continuing the big coverage of BRICS summit here at DD India, correspondent Amritpal Singh speaks to South African Trade and Industry Minister Ibrahim Patel. He said that South Africa expects that BRICS summit will play an important role in bringing investment from big economies like India and China.
As all is set for the 15th BRICS summit to be held in Johannesburg here in South Africa, the BRICS, which was primarily an economic grouping when it began, now has further diversified into other areas of political partnership. It has a security aspect to it, but economics and trade, especially in the given scenario, remains at the heart of the conversation between the leaders when they meet for the Leaders Summit. I have with me Ibrahim Patel. He is the Minister for Trade, Industry and Competition of South Africa. Minister Patel, as we stand here in Johannesburg on the eve of the 15th BRICS Summit, what is on the top of your mind when the leaders come and meet? What would be the most important thing they would be discussing?
Without any question, economics, commerce, trade, how to deepen the opportunities to grow the economy. South Africa and the other four BRICS countries want to create more opportunities for jobs, for young people, for small businesses, provide more opportunities for consumers, and that is what BRICS represent, an opportunity to do all of that. Two-way trade between South Africa and India is approximately $20 billion US, and we think we can do more. And we can do more with each of the BRICS countries. South Africa is a gateway to the African continent. It's a continent of 1.3 billion people. It's a continent with vast resources of minerals. It's the food basket for the world, and Africa's moment has come. So there's opportunities for BRICS investors, China, India, and the other countries to come and invest inside South Africa in manufacturing pharmaceutical products, being able to have productive services, digital services and others produced here for the African market and for the rest of the world.
Also, the BRICS is a grouping primarily of developing countries, given that today they contribute about 31% of the global GDP. But in terms of trade, do you think in terms of global trade that these countries need to cooperate more, and on what lines can they work on to take their share in the global trade to a higher relationship?
There are two important responsibilities that BRICS countries have. The first is to protect the global trading system, to keep it a system that is open, a system in which countries and nations trade with each other, and that we don't get the world to divide into two or more camps. Trade and investment must flow because they bring benefits to humanity. The second responsibility that we have as BRICS countries is to find opportunities to increase the level of trade, but also the composition of trade.
Coming more from Johannesburg, India's BRICS Sherpa Damu Ravi talked with our DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh exclusively, where he mentioned about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's priorities during the BRICS summit. Let's listen in.
Johannesburg in South Africa is all set to host the 15th BRICS summit. I have with me Mr. Damu Ravi, India's BRICS Sherpa. Welcome to DD India, sir. Now, this is the first in-person leader summit after the pandemic. How does that raise the expectations, and what is new in this edition of BRICS Summit?
All the leaders to meet in person in this important event. South African leadership, particularly the President, has done enormous work.
If you could take us through India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's priorities in this edition of the BRICS Summit.
Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a strong pitch for the development and the development dimension of the global discourse today. I think it dates back to the time when January earlier this year he hosted the Global South Summit, in which about 125 countries' leaders have participated. I think taking off from there, the deliberations within India's presidency of the G20 and the BRICS, there is a synergy developing, particularly the narrative on development coming from the developing countries' perspective, from the global south, and how we need to develop that perspective and put it in the right way of understanding the women-led development, the food security, bringing in millets into the context, and the lifestyle for environment when you talk about climate change and energy. These are the important dimensions that are being discussed, and thankfully, there is a lot of synergy within the BRICS discussions. So all of this are going to be captured in the Johannesburg Declaration that will come out at the end of the BRICS Summit. I think the focus here today is to do projects in the developing world using the new development bank resources and the technologies and the innovation that is happening in the BRICS countries. That's been very well brought out in the roadmap for economic cooperation among the BRICS countries. So eventually, gradually, these programs are being implemented in the BRICS countries, and Africa becomes a very priority country for all of us.
Really, Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks about the priorities of the global south in every international platform. How will the BRICS Summit also form a very, very important place to engage with those ideas for him?
Yes, I think some of the low-cost solutions that India has successfully introduced can be brought into the global south. I think one of which we've already discussed about the digital platform, the digital public goods is a very important enabler for development. And the second most important is the currency being discussed in the BRICS context right now. So again, Prime Minister has emphasized a lot on the doing trading in INR, so national currencies. So that's become now a priority item in the BRICS groups. And there'll be a more concrete action plan in the days ahead as to how to introduce it. So the global south and the BRICS fits in very well. And also we need to think that what are the success of the BRICS under the South Africa chairship will have its own positive impact into the India's G20 presidency. So because you have to understand, all the BRICS countries are also members of the G20. So we can create that kind of a close understanding on the global south issues and challenges.
Thank you very much for speaking with DD India. That was India's BRICS Sherpa Damu Ravi talking about the key themes in this edition of the BRICS Summit and India's priority at this global engagement. With camera person Ankit Rawat, Shubhendu Ghosh in Johannesburg for DD India.
All right, to spell out more on this, we're joined in by our correspondent Amrit Pal Singh. Amrit, this is for the first time that the BRICS leaders will be meeting in person after the COVID pandemic. Let us understand more from you about India's priorities at the summit.
Well, good morning to you. It's still night here in Johannesburg as we are slightly west of India. But we're talking about the priorities of India. It's very clearly that India would be pushing for the agenda of the global south. Remember, BRICS is a grouping of emerging or developing economies, and the concerns, priorities, aspirations of the global south form a key priority of India's G20 G20 presidency. So the Prime Minister, in his intervention at the BRICS Leaders Summit, is likely to bring this up prominently and push for greater cooperation amongst the developing countries, amongst the emerging economies, amongst what is referred to as the Global South, for completion of a more inclusive, a more fair, a more equitable world order. Apart from that, the Prime Minister could also raise the issue of climate change through innovative measures like life or lifestyle for environment, a development which is more inclusive, especially is women-led. Also, apart from that, we could see the Prime Minister's intervention touch upon the need for moving towards trading in local currencies, and there could be talk about a common currency in the BRICS, though there may not be announcements on that, but yes, surely there will be work to further this agenda.
All right, Amrit, could the expansion of BRICS also figure prominently, and also what kind of headway could we see being made on this?
Yes, expansion of the BRICS it would figure prominently here. As you know, many countries, over 100 countries, have expressed their interest in joining the BRICS grouping. India, per se, in principle, wants that, is open to expansion, especially of the Global South. As you know, at this summit, over 70 countries have been invited, and mostly from the Global South. Many countries from the African continent, many countries from the South American continent, countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, countries like Iran, Indonesia, who have expressed interest to join the BRICS. So India in principle is open to that. Other countries of the BRICS grouping seem amenable to this idea, but you know, we could expect no major announcements could be expected at this particular conference, because as you know, BRICS is a consensus-based organization. So the Johannesburg declaration could see, you know, draft resolutions being moved for what should be the criteria for admitting countries here. What are the guidelines that should be adopted for admitting newer countries into the grouping and expanding the base of the developing and the emerging economies around the world, so that the global architecture, both the governance architecture and the financial architecture, can be evolved in a manner that is more equitable and not just West-driven or not just driven by a select few. It is more broad-based.
All right, Amrit, we'll leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those inputs. And up next, we're heading for a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. West African bloc ECOWAS rejects Niger coup leader's 3-year transition plan. Junta leader urges political parties to submit their vision for the transition within 30 days. Rejecting the need for a public showdown with rivals, former US President Donald Trump is set to skip this week's first Republican presidential debate. To boost its long-range strike capabilities, Australia all set to buy US Tomahawk missiles that have a strike range of 1,500 kilometers.
Namaskaram from Telangana, India's youngest state, a rising star.
You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Let's continue getting you more international updates. Niger's coup leader has promised to return the nation to civilian rule within 3 years. General Tiani made the announcement as he met mediators from the West African Regional Bloc in Niamey. The junta head warned that any intervention by foreign forces would not be a walk in the park. The group of Western nations has reportedly rejected the 3-year time frame. It said that the bloc is not accepting any prolonged transition and has previously threatened the possibility of military intervention. Moving on to Russia-Ukraine conflict now, Denmark and the Netherlands have agreed to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. A detailed report ahead.
The offer came 2 days after the Netherlands and Denmark said the US had authorized the country to deliver American-made F-16s to Ukraine. Zelensky traveled to both countries to finalize the delivery deal. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, meeting with Zelensky at a Dutch Airways, said the planes would be delivered once specified conditions are met.
We can announce that the Netherlands and Denmark commit to transfer F-16 aircraft to Ukraine and the Ukrainian Air Force, in close cooperation with the United States and other partners, once the conditions for such a transfer have been met.
Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said Denmark will supply Ukraine with 19 F-16 fighters during a joint news conference with Ukrainian President at the Skydrupt Airways in Denmark.
We announced that we will donate 19 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Together with the Netherlands, we are the first country to make a solid and concrete commitment to donate Western fighter jets. And hopefully others will follow now.
Ukrainian officials have long asked for the advanced warplanes since the beginning of its war with Russia, which begins in February 2022. Zelensky calls the deal a breakthrough moment, but training for Ukrainian pilots could take months. The first delivery of Dennis F-16s is expected around the start of the new year. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay reports.
Meanwhile, Moscow has announced Ukraine of terrorism, and it did that after a fresh wave of drone attacks was reported in the Russian regions. Ukrainian drone strikes both on border regions and on the Russian capital have become increasingly common in recent months. Russian Foreign Ministry has said that in that context, the goals of the special military operation in Ukraine have become the priority of the country's foreign policy. Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow with more on this.
Moscow says Ukraine attempted to attack at least 4 Russian regions on Sunday. 5 people got injured in Kursk as a drone hit a railway station that triggered a fire. In Rostov, the governor says no injuries or damage has been reported after Ukrainian kamikaze drones were intercepted by the Russian air defense systems. 2 of Moscow's airports were forced to halt air traffic as a result of an attempted drone attack. The Ministry of Defense says drones were jammed and crashed in an unpopulated area. In Belgorod region that borders Ukraine and is most often attacked by the Ukrainian armed forces, air defenses destroyed 12 airborne targets. We also have heard from the Russian Ministry of Defense saying that another drone attack was thwarted over the Belgorod region, with Russian air defenses shooting down plane-type unmanned aerial vehicles. These attacks are described in Russia as acts of terrorism. The Russian Foreign Ministry condemned those attacks against the civilian infrastructure. Commenting on what happened in Kursk, spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the attack against the railway station makes the task of denazification of Ukraine and demilitarization of Ukraine an absolute priority for Russia's foreign policy. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Australia will spend $833 million to boost its long-range strike capabilities. A deal has been struck to buy more than 200 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States. Australia will become just the 3rd nation after the US and the United Kingdom to have access to Tomahawk cruise missiles. The missiles have a strike range of 1,500 kilometers and were deemed necessary in the country's most recent defense strategic review. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said that he will skip this week's first Republican presidential debate, arguing that Americans know him well, so there is no need for a public showdown with the rivals. In a message on his platform Truth Social, Trump touted what he called a hugely successful record as a president and what he described as his popularity among the American people. Despite facing a slew of legal battles, Trump says a wave of polls show him far out ahead of the Republican field. The first debate in the race for 2024 Republican presidential nomination is scheduled for Wednesday in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Chartered Accountants Bodies of India and Maldives signed a memorandum of understanding on Sunday during the South Asian Federation of Accountants Forum, which was held in Maldives. It is expected that the agreement will strengthen financial ties between the two countries and will benefit the accounting communities on both the sides. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Polls closed in Ecuador's presidential and legislative election on Sunday, overshadowed by political assassinations. This month, an anti-corruption candidate was killed, and voters hope the election winner will help tackle the nation's security situation. Early trends show leftist Luisa Gonzalez leading the race. With 70% of the votes counted in Guatemala's preliminary presidential runoff, results show Bernardo Arevalo with 59% of the votes and also Sandra Torres with 36% of the votes. Guatemalans voted on Sunday, hoping the election will bring an end to democratic backsliding. Southern African country of Zimbabwe is set to hold its general election on August 23rd. A dozen candidates are vying for the presidency, but the main contest is between incumbent Emmerson Mnangagwa and leading opposition candidate Nelson Chamisa. Political analysts say young voters who have never known a prosperous Zimbabwe could play a significant role in the election. Still to come on DD India News Hour, raging wildfires across the globe. Spain, Canada and the United States badly hit. US President to head to Hawaii to view the damage from Maui wildfire. The second and final adjustment to Chandrayaan 3's lunar lander successfully carried out. Touchdown expected on August 23rd. Relief to consumers from high prices of the vegetables. People in India's national capital to get onions at subsidized rates from Monday.
Welcome to India's holiday capital.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Preeti. Let's quickly take a look at the headlines. We're tracking this out. North Korea's Kim Jong-un inspects cruise missile test, just as South Korea and the United States kick off annual military drills on Monday. Wildfires in Canada continue to intensify. Evacuations double in British Columbia, with the armed forces deployed in many areas. India beat Ireland by 33 runs to win the second T20 International and take an unassailable 2-0 lead in the three-match series. In more international updates, Canada is sending armed forces to tackle fast-spreading wildfires in British Columbia. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the western province is dealing with the flames and that have put more than 35,000 people under evacuation order. Also, British Columbia declared a state of emergency and imposed a ban of non-essential travel to free up accommodation for evacuees and also firefighters. West Kelowna Fire Chief said that he saw some hope after battling epic fires for the past 4 days. He said conditions have improved, helping firefighters to put boots on the ground and dump water to douse the flames. Government officials urged residents living in evacuation order zones to leave immediately.
As Canadians are seeing in the horrific images they see of devastation and fear of residents in Northwest Territories and in BC, it is an extraordinarily serious situation. The federal government is continuing to step up. We're there with Canadian Armed Forces resources. We're active in coordinating with regional and local governments to make sure people are safe, make sure we're doing everything to protect lives and property. But there's a lot more to do, and we're going to continue to stay focused on that.
Thousands of residents have been evacuated from the southern region of Spain as deadly wildfires continue to rage. 11 towns have been affected and more than 26,000 people have been evacuated. The blaze, which broke out last week in the Tenerife National Park, has spread across thousands of hectares. The fire is at a scale that has never been seen before in Spain's Canary Islands. On to the U.S. now. Washington governor on Sunday visited an evacuation center for people affected by wildfires that swept through Spokane County. The grave fire left one person dead and 185 structures destroyed, prompting evacuations. Wildfires burnt through 10,800 acres by Sunday morning.
We have maybe 200 homes that have been lost. We will be assessing that damage as quickly as humanly possible to bring to bear every assistance we can for people that have lost their homes. We want to thank the individuals of Spokane County who stepped forward, the donations that are coming in, the volunteers that are coming forward. It's been very inspiring to see the Spokane community pull together to do everything they can for people.
U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to the Hawaiian island of Maui on Monday to view the damage from the wildfires that killed more than 100 people. The president will be accompanied by First Lady Jill Biden as they're expected to meet with first responders and survivors, as well as local officials, to assess the extensive damage to the island. More than 2,000 homes were destroyed in one of the deadliest wildfires to have hit the U.S. in over a century. Tropical storm Hillary has hit Southern California on the west coast of the United States. California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency for much of Southern California. Flash flood warnings are in effect throughout the region that is normally accustomed to droughts. Tropical storm Hillary, which will weaken over the next 48 hours, is expected to be the wettest storm ever to hit the U.S. Southwest. And Tropical Storm Hillary has arrived in Southern California, where authorities have warned of severe flooding risks from unusual torrential rains. It is the first tropical storm to hit the state since 1939. DD India correspondent Ira Spitzer reports from San Francisco.
Authorities in California, and especially Southern California, are doing everything they can to try and make the public aware of the serious potential danger from Tropical Storm Hillary. And just to give a sense of how unusual this type of storm is, it's been more than 80 years since a tropical storm made landfall in California because of the cool water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. It's very unusual to have a storm that actually makes it this far in the Pacific. But that is the situation that has happened because of some slightly warmer water brought on by the El Nino weather pattern, as well as some unusual pressure systems. So Hillary was downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm when it initially made landfall in Mexico. But the flood risk is very high, according to the authorities. And some of the reasons for that are in the desert areas, especially of Southern California. These are areas that are not accustomed to getting much rain at all, so the ground is not easily able to absorb that kind of water. And for example, in Death Valley National Park, there are forecasts that there could be as much rain in 24 hours in Death Valley as they usually would expect in an entire year. So when you have that sort of torrential rain in these dry areas, flash flooding becomes very dangerous very quickly. So authorities distributing sandbags to residents in a number of counties have made emergency declarations and have certainly urged residents to stay home, not to tempt fate and try and drive around, which really can be especially dangerous when you have standing water on the road. So that is the fear in Southern California right now. And just as things became as the storm was approaching, there was actually an earthquake, a 5.0 magnitude earthquake in the town of Ojai, just an hour north of Los Angeles. So residents already on edge from the arrival of this tropical storm now had to deal with an earthquake. Now, there have been no reports of serious damage from that earthquake so far, but now the big danger is the possibility of damage to both potentially to property as well as to the population from the flooding, which is to be expected from Tropical Storm Hillary. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
75 people have died in landslides and flash floods in Shimla, the capital city of the northern Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. Indian Army and Disaster Response Force personnel have conducted search operations in a temple which collapsed due to a rain-triggered landslide in Shimla district on August 14th. 17 bodies have been recovered from the site so far. More than 300 people have died across the state due to landslides over the past several months. "75 people, as we told you, have died in landslides in the state of Himachal Pradesh." Turning focus to other updates, Indian spacecraft Chandrayaan-3 has reached closer to the moon. Now, the soft landing on the South Pole is scheduled around 6:04 p.m. on August 23rd. And India's space agency, ISRO, said that the module would undergo internal checks and also await sunrise at the designated landing site. Russia's first moon mission in 47 years, the Luna 25, crash-landed on the moon on Sunday. It was supposed to land the next day on the south pole of the moon to take forward the hunt for water on the Earth's lone natural satellite. All eyes are now on India's moon mission, Chandrayaan-3, which is also eyeing the same spot as the Russian mission for a soft landing on Wednesday. It completed a key maneuver on Sunday. Let's take a look.
Sunday has brought disappointment for space enthusiasts. Russia's first moon mission in nearly 50 years has ended in failure. The Luna 25 spacecraft spun out of control during pre-landing maneuvers and smashed into the moon. Roscosmos said a special commission is looking into why the moonshot failed. In a statement, the Russian space agency said it lost contact with the craft shortly after a problem occurred as it was shunted into pre-landing orbit on Saturday. It added, the apparatus moved into an unpredictable orbit and ceased to exist as a result of a collision with the surface of the moon. A Soyuz 2.1 rocket carrying the Luna 25 craft blasted off from the Vostochny Cosmodrome 5,550 kilometers east of Moscow at 2:11 hours Moscow time on the 11th of August. The lander was boosted out of the Earth's orbit towards the moon a little over an hour later. It entered the moon's orbit on the 16th of the month and was due to attempt a soft landing around the South Pole on Monday. Russia's failure shifts the world's attention completely now onto India's moon mission, the Chandrayaan-3, which is scheduled to put a lander and rover on the moon on Wednesday. It completed a second and final deep boosting operation early on Sunday. The Indian Space Research Organisation, or ISRO, tweeted about it saying, Chandrayaan-3 is set to land on the moon on the 23rd of August around 1804 hours IST. It thanked everyone for all the good wishes and positivity and shared links of where the event can be viewed live from 1727 IST on that day, including its website and DD National, among others. India's Chandrayaan-3 was launched on the 14th of July. It completed a series of orbit-raising maneuvers to first slingshot out of the Earth's orbit to enter the moon's on the 5th of August. Some other key maneuvers followed, which led to the lander module separating from the propulsion module on the 17th of this month. The moment of truth will now be on Wednesday, when billions of eyes will be glued to screens to watch history in the making. A successful soft landing will put India in a rare club of nations comprising the US, Russia and China, which has succeeded in landing on the moon earlier. Gautam Roy, DD India.
And now we take a look at more news which are making it to the headlines. Police say an encounter is underway in the Laro-Parigam area of Pulwama district of India's Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmir Zone Police says that 2 or 3 terrorists were believed to be trapped. A visual from the spot showed vehicles of the Central Reserve Police Force deployed at the scene.
Begin your pursuit of liberation.
The 4-day youth summit concluded on Sunday with the unanimous adoption of the Y20 communique. The Y20 summit was held at the Indian city of Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. Around 125 delegates from G20 countries, guest countries and international organizations participated in the summit.
Seek the sermons of Buddha as you go.
The Indian government will commence the retail sale of onions at a subsidized rate of ₹25 per kg in the national capital from Monday. This is being done to give relief to consumers from high prices. The organization is already selling tomatoes at a subsidized rate after prices of the vegetables skyrocketed in the market. The 10-day Onam festivities in southern state of Kerala began on Sunday with the first day also called Atham Day. This festival falls in the month of Chingam, the first month of Malayalam calendar. Keralites celebrate Onam by preparing for the symbolic welcome of Mahabali, the mythological king of Kerala. The festival will culminate on August 29th. Still to come on DD India News Hour, we'll tell you how Asian markets stumble after China's central bank trims one-year rate. Also, impact on crude oil, which remains stable on Monday. Coco Gauff wins the biggest title of her career at the Cincinnati Open. And also a look at how the rich cultural heritage of the Uzbek people and their traditional dance form was presented in Malaysia.
Welcome to Kumarakom, Kerala, God's own country.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Preeti. Let's continue getting more updates. We get you business updates now. Asian markets stumbled on Monday after China delivered a similar cut to the lending rates than markets had counted on, continuing Beijing's run of disappointing stimulus steps. China's central bank trimmed its one-year lending rate by 10 basis points and left its 5-year rate unmoved, a surprise to analysts who had expected cuts of 1.5 basis points, or in fact 15 basis points to both. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan slipped 2.3% to fresh low for the year, adding to a 3.9% dive last week. Global crude oil price remained stable on Monday. Traders evaluated supply cuts brought on by the International Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, that is OPEC+, against ongoing concerns about rising global demand at the time of high interest rates. Brent crude lowered, in fact, 8 cents to stand at $84.72 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude hiked 3 cents to stand at $81.28 a barrel. And you're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sport updates. India beat Ireland by 33 runs to win the second T20 international match. And with this win, India take an unassailable 2-0 lead in the 3-match series. We get you a detailed report ahead.
Jasprit Bumrah-led side went up in the 3-match T20 series. India dashed out an all-rounder performance to beat Ireland by 33 runs in second T20 international on Sunday. Batting first, India piled a challenging 185 scores in 20 overs. Rituraj Gaikwad led India's charge with the bat, scoring 58 runs off 43 balls, and also a crucial 71-run partnership with Sanju Samson, as India lost Yashasvi Jaiswal and Tilak Verma inside the power play. Benjamin White dismissed Sanju Samson for 40 runs. Rinku Singh and Shivam Dube then chipped in with an explosive cameos, with the pair smashing 42 runs in the final 2 overs. Rinku scored 38 runs, while Shivam Dube returned unbeaten with 22 runs. In response, Ireland got off a terrible start, almost similar to India. Prasidh Krishna injected 2 blows in the first over and Ravi Bishnoi made it 3 in the final over of the power play. Apart from Andrew, no other Irish batter could withstand the Indian bowling attack. He scored 72 runs off 51 balls. The skipper, alongside with Krishna and Bishnoi, finished with 2 wickets each, as Ireland could only manage 152 for the loss of 8 wickets. With the match to spare, India aims to make a clean sweep in the 3-match T20 series. Sports Desk, DD India.
Spain beat England 1-0 to secure its first FIFA Women's World Cup title. Spain's first major international trophy made it the first European team to win the Women's World Cup since Germany in 2007. La Roche also became the first team since Germany to win both the men's and the women's World Cup titles.
Spain women's soccer team created history as they clinched their maiden Women's World Cup title on Sunday. Spain defeated England by 1-0 margin in the final clash to become only the second country after Germany to win both the men's and women's World Cups. Captain Olga Carmona gave Spain a 1-0 lead over England at half-time in the final, which became the decisive strike on the day. Carmona scored in the 29th minute after England lost possession in midfield, and Spain countered quickly to take advantage in the clash at Stadium Australia. Spain were awarded a penalty shortly after the hour mark for a handball by midfielder Kira Walsh. However, goalkeeper Mary Earp saved Jennifer Hermoso's spot kick by diving to her left. England coach Sarina Wiegman made a number of changes, including bringing on forward Lauren James, but they could not find an equaliser as Spain clung on to win their first major title. Spain's Aitana Bonmati got the best player of the tournament, while Salma Paraluelo won the Best Young Player award. Paraluelo has 15 goals in 29 matches for La Roja so far and had won the Under-17, Under-20 so far. On Sunday, she was crowned the world champion, adding another feather to her cap. England's goalkeeper Mary Earps won the Golden Glove after another brilliant performance with the Lionesses. Meanwhile, the momentous victory of Spain not only crowned Spain as the world champions, but also solidified their status as a force to be reckoned with on the global stage of women's football. Sports Desk, DD India.
In women's tennis, 7th seed Coco Gauff beat Carolina Markova 6-3, 6-4 to win the biggest title of her young career at the Cincinnati Open. Gauff broke the Czech 3 times in the opening set and confidently served out the opener to Love in her first WTA 1000 final appearance.
Champion Coco Gauff.
And before we close, let's take a look at some visuals from Uzbekistan Culture Days hosted by Malaysia. All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, which is formerly known as Twitter, and also Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.